Right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Nara JALT MyShare event. I'm Lee McDowell, the president of the Nara chapter of JALT, of course, JALT, Japan Association of Language Teachers. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you all here this morning for our event. We have 22 people joining us today, which is wonderful. A lot of Nara members, a lot of local members, and a few from around Japan. We've got some from Osaka and Kobe. Maybe not everyone's here at the moment, probably still coming, but we're on 10 o'clock. We're on Japan time, so starting exactly 10 o'clock. And yes, welcome everyone. We've actually got a few members from overseas as well, which is great. You know, I guess one of the good points about having online online events is that we can include people from outside of Japan. And so welcome to everyone. This is the first live event that we've done in over 12 months. We've had events in 2020, but they were recorded online events. And so this is the first time that we've had a live event for a long time. And it's very good to have you all joining us to get together today, almost like the real thing. But as I said, sometimes even better because we can have people coming from further afield, and you can do it in your pajamas, although probably not a good idea. So yes, I just want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us for this event. The MyShare event has been a long-running event for Nara JALT, and it's a great practical forum for sharing language teaching ideas. And it's exciting. We have four separate presentations today. And I am going to hand over now to our event leader, who's going to introduce the speakers and tell us a little bit about what we need to do for the discussions and keep us all on track. So good morning, Robert.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lee. So as presenters have been informed, you have 20 minutes. At the 15-minute mark, I'll give you okay, to let you know that you've got 5 minutes left. And at the 20-minute mark, I'm sorry, I'll just have to cut you off because if you go over time, this whole event is going to take longer than we really want. There will then be a 10-minute Q&A session. So if you would like to add your questions during the presentation in the chats part of Zoom, then please add your questions there. If not, just when it's time for the Q&A, we'll just have a free-for-all, and I'll cut everyone off at the 10-minute mark. We'll then have a 5-minute break for the next presenter to get ready and to allow participants to go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, etc. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our first presenter. So testing, whether for course evaluations or for overall proficiency, as well as necessary evils that we as teachers cannot avoid. So there are a number of commercial tests available to help alleviate the burden of test creation on teachers. And so many commercial tests are online, and while they may be appealing because of their ability to measure all 4 language schools, they're only as good and effective as with pre-test taking preparation of both teachers and learners. So our first MyShare presenter, Jason Moser from Kanto Gakuin University, will share with us how he has been able to successfully implement one such test. So Jason, hand over to you, and your time starts now.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Let's see. How about now?
Here we go. Yeah, you're on.
All right, it worked. Okay, thank you, everybody who's here today, and special thanks to Nara JALT for organizing this. My first ever teacher-related presentation was with Nara JALT in 2002, I believe.
Really?
And part of that was, there was a dinner involved and a small stipend. But it was quite a long time ago. I'm talking about today, as Robert mentioned, in particular the Pearson Progress Test, which is an online 4 skills test. It's no longer called the Progress Test, it's called the Benchmark Test. So if you're interested, you have to Google that name. I don't have any financial ties to Pearson, so this is just strictly my experience with the product. And the course for this involved about 500 students, so it's fairly large. And it was essentially a one-man show. So when I use we, I'm essentially just saying myself. So let's take a look at the first slide. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the CEFR, which is at the bottom. And then if you look at the top, you have the Global Scale of English, which is Pearson's scale. And if you're unfamiliar with it, each of those numbers, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, those represent qualitative differences in language use. And as you can kind of see by the graph, they basically, created a finer grand in relation to the CEFR. So it's quite a revolutionary scale, I think, but a lot of people don't know about it. And of course, on the left, we have the different tests you can take, different levels. And what I'll say is interesting about these tests is if you look at the bottom test, which we used, which is 15 to 30, the test actually tests, below, what am I doing here? It tests below and over that actual range. So the first progress test will actually test as high as 35, and it'll go as low as 10, which is quite interesting. So the first thing we did, so basically the two parts to this presentation are, first, I want to show you how important it is to prepare for implementing this kind of technology in the class. And I'll show you what we did. And then at the end, I'll just show you some of the scores so you can kind of just see what it looked like. So we started off, first of all, by trialing it. Pearson kindly, they knew we were interested in the project, in the test. So they allowed us without cost to trial it for a semester. And I did it with 40 students. And then on top of it, I did it with, I took the test myself about 10 times. But so for the next screen, these are just the basic features of the test. So it's tied to Pearson's My English Lab, which is with all their, their coursebook online materials are there. So if you're using that for using the textbook online and you register for the test, it's just a matter of clicking. So it's quite convenient. The test can be assigned 3 times. I think it goes up to like 2 years. There's 3 sections to it. The first section is grammar and vocabulary. Second section is listening and speaking, and the third is writing. The first section is the adaptive part. So based on your score for the first section, that determines what will follow in sections 2 and 3. So there is an adaptive element to it. And then there's these other features as well. Again, we trialed it, and these were my basic sort of conclusions about trialing it. Will be too unfamiliar for the students. So the potential to really kind of, pardon my language, for things to get screwed up and for it to turn into disaster are pretty high because it's such an unfamiliar test. I mean, you're essentially, 18, 19-year-old kids are going to be talking to a computer. The sample test has its value, but it's exactly that. It's a sample test, and it doesn't expose students to all the items. The other thing, of course, you can potentially cheat on. I don't know what it's like now, but when I used it, you could potentially cheat on it with copy paste. Not easy to do, but doable. And from trying as well in the class, I found that students at my level of student, they don't do the speaking part well in class because it's just kind of strange, you know, sitting in a class of 40 students talking into a computer. So we always thought that if we were going to use this effectively, we had to do it outside of class. But having said that, a really competent teacher can manage to do this in class. It's not that big of a deal. So moving on, so what we did, taking all these trialing conclusions into consideration, we had to kind of prepare students properly. And one of the things we did was we broke the test up into steps. So we actually did it over a week, over 1 month, as you can see here. And so we started off, you know, getting students to you know, log in and take the sample test, which records not their score, but it records which students took the test or not, equipment check. And by week 2, as you can see, we started to try to familiarize students with the test in class, you know, about 30 minutes of a 90-minute class. And week 2, we used, we focused on section 2, the first 3 listening and speaking items. We didn't focus on section 1 because it's just a simple grammar and vocabulary, you know, scrolling down and clicking on the correct term. And our students were already using online learning, so it wasn't a big deal. And then week 3, so week 2 students we'd familiarize them with that. They'd go home, take the test, that section of the test, pause it, come back, and proceed to week 3, where we finish off the 4, 5, 6 items for listening, speaking, familiarize students with them, and that kind of. So it's kind of unique that we actually did this test over a month. But having said that, by the 3rd time of the test, basically you just had to assign it and give them 2 weeks to do it because they'd become already familiarized and comfortable with it. The other thing we did is, so I'll just show you, this is an item. This is item 4 from session 2, and it's a retell. So you just listen to the story, and then you got 30 seconds to retell it. So, you know, most students have never experienced this kind of, these types of items before. So one of the things we did, or I did, is I provided them with a guide sheet right here, and of course written in Japanese. So this is the session 2, section 2 guide sheet. And if you look at number 4, that's this thing right here. And basically we, in Japanese, told the students, okay, you've got 3, 4. 4 is a listen and retell. It's 30 seconds, and we included the steps. Just click, listen, beat, retell it in your own words, and then they have to do it about 4 or 5 times. Now, interesting, I want to add, it's not the same story 4 or 5 times. It's a different story they have to tell 5 times. So this test is very, very thorough. I think the longest sort of repeating of an item is like 7, 8 times. So it's a very, very thorough test. So students, when they were taking this test, had this little guide sheet in front of them to show them, you know, how things were sequenced and exactly what they had to do. And, you know, asking students later, this was quite useful for them. And by the 3rd test, a lot of students didn't feel they need to use it anymore. For teachers, they had this as well, but we also provided them with very specific information about how they should teach or familiarize students to the test. And this is an example here. This is, again, item 4, the listen and tell. And if you look here, you know, we're telling them it's not for verbatim, so you don't want the students to try to memorize it. Hints like always be talking. It's not measuring grammar and vocabulary. It's measuring communicative ability. So telling teachers these important points, and then, you know, in the 2nd paragraph, very specific things like the short stories themselves are about 4 to 6 sentences, and usually a sentence is between, you know, 6 and 14 words. So we relayed all that information to the teachers, and we even went as far as to show them or to tell them how they could practice it using their course book. So if you look at how to practice, I've outlined, I've highlighted dialogues that fit this particular type of item, and teachers could practice it in class. So, you know, a lot of prep. In regards to cheating and not taking the test seriously, so the test can be done in about 45 minutes, and if you just fool around, you can do it in 10. But in order to get the students to take the test seriously, we counted it as part of their grade, which in the past we had never done for TOEIC. TOEIC was just, we had students take, this test actually, we used it as a replacement for TOEIC, and TOEIC we never counted as part of their grade, but this time we embedded it in their course grade. And we also introduced a system where if you do the test properly, you get 20%. Like for one test, you get 20%. If you don't do the test properly, you get 0. So how do we know that it was done properly? Well, the system actually sends you warnings. So when the student's grade comes in, it'll highlight the grade saying, oh, you shouldn't trust this grade because of this, this, and that. You get a warning from the system. And also the other way you can check is something like this. If you look on the left side here, here's an example of a student that did it in 10 minutes, about 10, 15 minutes, and everything on the test is below 10. So there was no effort there. Whereas on the right side, the student, you know, if with these types of tests, if it's level appropriate, if the student does make some effort, it will show something. Like, you know, the first test is from 15 to 30. And if you look at the top, the student got 13 in grammar. So even though they tested below the sort of the normal boundary of the test, it still recorded something. So we actually showed students this and said, listen, if you do it properly, something will appear, and then you get your 20%. So we used that, and that was quite effective. Basically the students, once they kind of realize that, okay, if they do it properly and don't try to cheat or game the system, then I'll get 20%. If I fool around and, you know, try and cheat whatever and I get caught, I get 0. So, I mean, there was no incentive for them to cheat. Okay, what we're going to look at now is the final results of the test. So if you look on the left here, 89% of the students took all 3 tests over the course of the year. If I had counted 2 tests out of 3, it would have been well over 95%. So we had a very good completion rate. And if you look below, those are the TOEIC completion rates. So compared to TOEIC, we did well. If you're looking at software issues, you can see the next column, not really any big issues. In cases like this, all we did was contact Pearson and told them, and then they reset the test for us. And the student unfortunately had to take it again, but it's 45 minutes of their life. The other thing here, the big sort of plus of the whole testing system, of course, if you look, a number of students who made some type of progress, 72%. So these are non-required English, a non-required English course, and you've got 72%. You've got evidence that says that 72% of the students made some progress. I mean, for a program, that's a pretty, you know, we're moving into this world of evidence-based learning, and I think this type of test is one way to easily show evidence of progress over the course of the year. And then if you look at the next category, these are students that actually jumped a band. So they went from A1 to A1 plus, or A1 to A2. So having that type of evidence, I think, is quite important. And I think my own opinion is people are kind of crazy not to use this test. Looking at, this is what the type of information that the teachers get here. So these are the students, and then at the top you see the 3 overall times, and then it's broken down into reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And you can also see for grammar. And if you look, you can see these little arrows, these little underlined with stars. They tell you that something was potentially wrong with the test. not necessarily cheating. So for example, it'll pick up background noise and it'll say, well, there was background noise in the test and this might have impacted the grade. But these are the results this is what you see with the scores. And then you can click on the student and you can even look in finer detail. So, and the students get to see this, and my impression is that the students, you know, when they started to see by the second test, some of them started to see that they were getting better, and by the third test, they were quite happy. You know, it's quite motivated. It's quite motivating for them. Finally, here's a final some more data to look at. So I analyzed every single class, and I'm class 1, and in our placement test, my class is about 4th or 5th out of all the classes, which is about 15, 16 classes. So good, but not the best. But my class had the best scores throughout. And I think the simple reason for that, despite not being the top student in the placement test, I think the simple reason for that is because of me, because I was the most informed, qualified person to familiarize students with the test. And as you can see, 24 out of 24 did the test. The scores went up average each time. 20 out of 24 students showed some progress. And then you can see on the far right, students that moved actually went up a band. And you can see the starting level after the first test of students. So you can see that there was some students actually did, more students actually passed the test and were now kind of in the CEFAR band, right? Class 2 below is from a different teacher. And if you look, what stands out is if you look at the first test score, the placement test between her class and my class, they're almost negligible. They're essentially the same level. But if you look, her 14 is quite low. And the problem with that, the problem we had with this test was a lot of teachers didn't take the test seriously and didn't properly familiarize the students to it. And that really depressed the first score. And this teacher, so teachers were provided with the test, they were allowed to take it. And after the first test, no teacher had even taken the test. I was the only one who had ever taken the test. And this teacher, class 2, she's actually a full-time teacher. So it's kind of somewhat inexcusable. But as you can see, she kind of smartened up, so to speak, and had good results at the end. You see some students made progress. But one of the things that you can see with this type of test is you can really see good teaching from bad teaching. It's quite obvious. So we had classes, top classes, where the teacher we knew was kind of semi-incompetent. And in some cases, in one class, the scores actually went down from the base score, actually digressed. Whereas, interestingly, the lowest in that department, the lowest class, which is quite separated in the placement test, that teacher actually, her scores for the progress test were equal to the top classes scores. So you can, one of the sort of dangers of this test is it really exposes bad teaching and reciprocally shows really good teaching. So that's about all I have to say. I think I got 20 seconds left. So sorry if I spoke a little bit fast. And that's about it. So I just say thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. You've exactly on time.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, now, thank you, Jason. And we'd like to now open it up for a 10-minute discussion. If anyone has any questions, please, now's the time. There are no chat questions, so hey, Lee, go. Lee, hey.
Is that okay? Can I ask?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason. Interesting presentation. I'm curious about like the choice, the rationale in your university implementing this one. I'm not sure if I caught that. You're in implementing this test, but perhaps what I'm particularly interested in hearing is like what are would you say are the advantages of this test over, for example, TOEIC? Because I think TOEIC is really widespread throughout universities. So, well, yeah, certainly it is. But for our university, where I am, where I work, we're using TOEIC, and I'm just curious to get your. I'm sure you've had some experience with TOEIC in the past, to get your take on like the advantages of this test over, for example, the TOEIC.
Okay.
Or even ACAN, you might throw an ACAN in there as well, because I think it's where it's actually a criterion-based test, right? This test.
Yeah, I think so this test replaced TOEIC, because I started teaching at this university about 6 years ago, and they were using TOEIC, and the TOEIC scores were brutal, obviously, like most places. You'd have like 500 students, or whatever number amount take them, and 2 people would score over 500, right? So to me it was a big waste of money. And this course was managed by a committee, like the liberal arts committee, and so I was kind of attacking TOEIC. As soon as I got to the university, I was attacking TOEIC and just saying it was a waste of money, which it was. And so finally, after about 2 years, they kind of listened to what I was saying, and they said, okay, well, do you got anything else? What can we do? And so I gave them the option of no test or test. And we looked at different tests, and so they wanted to have a test. There was money for it, and they wanted to have a test. And I put the no test on the table, but they wanted the test. And so we looked at different tests, and this is the one that we liked. And again, one of the reasons why we were kind of moving away from TOEIC is because our departments are nutrition, education, design, and communication. And so for nutrition and education, there's no real need to study TOEIC. And the teachers in that department, the non-English teachers, eventually recognized that as well. They didn't even really know what TOEIC was. I mean, they approved it, but they didn't really know what it was, that it was, a business type genre. So I don't know if that answers your question. Basically, we had to have a test. TOEIC was a waste of money, and the teachers kind of recognized that we don't really need to, there's no need to be kind of doing business English at this stage.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other questions, please? We have 6 minutes left, so I have a question. So you spend a bit of time giving instructions in Japanese for the students.
Yeah.
Do you think the test publisher should actually have a multi-language function, so students could choose, have the instructions in Japanese? Or?
Yeah, no, yes, I mean, because we use the product, like we're one of only a few universities that used it at this scale at that time. And so we were asked for feedback, and one of the things that I mentioned was, at least for the first couple bands, for the A1, A2 levels, they should have Japanese or language support. So that's been communicated. I know not just by me, but other users in Japan. But whether they add that or not, they don't have it right now for the benchmark, as far as I know. But I mean, I guess it's something they've talked about, or we've told them.
It's not, sorry to interrupt, but it's not designed for Japan, is it? I imagine, or is it? Is it designed for a Japanese audience, or is it worldwide?
It's worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, because you can, most online tools now have multi-language. You can choose your language kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be such a hard thing for them to do if they wanted to. Just one other question. A lot of universities are on limited budgets and always complaining about money. So just how much does it cost per user to take
okay,
this,
so so we you can negotiate. So there, we were using a course book, right? So so because we were using course book, the Pearson, one of the Pearson course books, they were willing to give us a discount, but it's comparable to TOEIC price-wise. It's very comparable to TOEIC, but on top of that, you get the test. At this particular test, you got it 3 times, and it's not within 1 year. I think the limit might be 2 years. I'm not quite sure, but it's not. It's not for like a license for 1 year. It's longer than that. Most products, online products, are at least 2 years for any type of publisher. So the fact that we were using the course book and we were doing it with quite a few students, we were able to negotiate a cheaper price, and the price ended up being what we pay for TOEIC.
Okay, thank you. Ali, yes.
What's the textbook, by the way? The course book?
Well, no, it's any Pearson course book.
Mm-hmm. But
anything.
Curiously, what is the course book that you're using?
Okay, well now it was cutting edge, and now it's Roadmap. It's a brand new one, and we use their learning management system as well. So the test was just a matter of clicking from homework to test. It's all there in front of you. There was nothing really special, like nothing complicated about it once the test was loaded.
Yeah. Any other questions out there? We still have 2 more minutes, 2.5 minutes.
I would add that, I would just add that, if you're serious about using the test and you have, a certain amount of students and you want to trial it, I found them to be Pearson to be very reasonable. Like they gave us free accounts to trial the test, and they didn't say, well, we'll give you this many. I said, they just asked you how many do you want. I said, okay, I'll do it for 1 class, and they actually made the accounts for us.
That's good business, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And just
anyone else have something further? Yeah, Ellie, go. Yeah.
Sorry, if there are no other questions. I'm interested. You said like taking the test 3 times. You've got students taking the test multiple times. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So is it like a pre-post test setup, or you do it?
You can. We did it in May, and then October, and then January. So we did it. The test is assigned 3 times. As you can assign it 3 times, and you could do it over, I'm guessing, minimum 2 years. But our course only runs for a year, so we did it at the beginning of the semester, like late April, early May, and then when they came back, we did it like right at the start of the 2nd semester, and then we did it at the end of the semester.
Right. And that's all one cost.
Yes. Yes, but I believe now it's the benchmark is the benchmark system now. Their new test, it's changed a bit. Like you can just buy 1 test. I believe you can buy like 2 tests or 1 test or whatever. And I don't think. And whereas we had to assign 1 level of test to all the students, you can actually, I believe, with the benchmark, you can all the tests are available. So we bought the 15 to 30 test, but I think now with the system they have now, you can actually assign different classes different tests, which I think is quite a good thing as well.
Quick question.
Yes.
Sorry. So if you're trialing it for your students, do you recommend taking the same test that they might be taking, like that same level? Would that be the best way to get familiar with it, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, for sure.
Okay,
so
sorry.
Yeah.
We have to wrap it up there. But if you want to finish your sentence, go.
No,
Jason.
You definitely, if you're going to trial it, you want to use the test that you're going to use, because the items and the sequence is probably if I recall, it's different.
So it depends on how the student takes the test, because it's adaptive, right? So.
Well, yeah, but sorry, I'll just the first level test, the items, there's lots and lots of different items. They retest you on different content, but it's the same item. So students end up taking different tests, but it's within that testing area.
Okay, we have to stop there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jason. Very informative.
Thanks, Jason. Yes, and thank you again, Libby, and to all the presenters today. It was very interesting and very informative, and really great to be back in a group together. Although it's remote, we're not in the same room, but this is certainly much better than nothing, isn't it? So thank you again to all the presenters for your time, for your efforts. I mean, traditionally after our event, we'd go out and have a nice lunch. Actually, Nara JALT in April, we'd probably go out into the park. It's always a nice place, and have a little picnic in the Nara park. But unfortunately, we have to still be patient with that. But as I said, I mean, at least we can have this kind of interaction, which is very valuable for me, and I think I can speak for all of us. So thank you, presenters. Thank you also to the officers. There's a lot of effort that goes into these events, a lot of time, and thank you to everyone involved there, and also to participants for joining us today from near and far. It's really good to see you all, to have you all here with us, and we look forward to more participation in the future. I don't have the next event to announce, but you'll be in our network, and you'll be finding out shortly when our next event is on, and then we look forward to seeing your faces again, probably online for some time, but hopefully in the not too distant future we'll be able to get back together again in the same room. I think we'll still actually, you know, after 2020, I think we'll still keep that online element to be able to have people like Gina's coming from Chicago, which is really a new, I guess, a new adventure for Nara JALT, to be able to welcome people from overseas and all over the world. It's great. So once again, thank you to everyone. And I'm going to leave this meeting open just for a little bit more, and ask the officers to stay on. But if you're quite welcome to continue the chats here. But I'll close this MyShare Nara JALT event by once again saying thank you very much, and see you next time.